I'd love to turn things over to you so you can go ahead and share your screen and tell us all about your topic.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Jennifer, for inviting me here today, and thank you to many of you. I know a lot of us have already been in contact this school year. Today it's just going to be me. Unfortunately, Connie's out sick, but I'm going to show you a photo of Connie too, so if you're not quite sure who I'm talking about, that we're hoping to make some connections today. So, if you haven't heard the phrase before, students in transition, we're going to go over what that means. We are talking about families and students that have concerns with homelessness or high housing needs. I would love it. I know that this is a big group. I'm not going to ask people to pass around or spend our time that way, but if you could just briefly in the chat, pop your name in there and what your role is today, whether that's a staff at a particular site or whether you're here as a family member. I'd just love to get a little sense of who's in the space today. And as you're doing that, I would just like to point out the graphic that we're taking a look at too, right? And each of us here is really a critical support for students. So just knowing what's out there in terms of services, if you're a community member or a parent, maybe this is something that's a concern for you or someone you know, or just having an awareness of the services that the district offers. Well, it looks like we have a nice mix of staff and parents. So as you're continuing some introductions in the chat, I did want to put up photos of members of our team that were not available to attend today. From the Rochester Public Schools side, this is your Rochester Public Schools team for students in transition. So you can see me there. My colleague, Connie, and I should have updated this slide, but her title has changed just slightly to Students in Transition Navigator. Basically, Connie and I are doing very similar work. Shay Nichols was just hired on our team as an eviction prevention specialist. Some of you know Shay as being a resiliency specialist within the district formally. And then we report to Lita Casper, who is the coordinator of community partnerships. And feel free, Jennifer's going to help me monitor the chat without Connie here. If there's a question or something you have along the way, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll have time at the end for questions as well.
That's great. I'll try to keep an eye on things here.
Yeah, let me know. I'll try to keep an eye too. Then in terms of community partners that are also fully embedded members of our team, you may see some of these folks in your school buildings. We have Nicolette Keller and Emily Craig, who are Olmsted County Hope Collaborative Navigators. And Emily in particular has a presence at the middle schools and Mayo High School. Going back, Connie has a particular presence at the remaining high schools, including Phoenix and the ALC. And then Nicolette and I are contacts across the elementaries together. Nicolette also has a relationship with MinSync as well. And Christy Anderson, who is our Homework Starts with Home navigator from Three Rivers, has time and space over at Hawthorne. And we'll talk a little bit about how you would refer to this program, who does what, but for right now, I just wanted to give you some names and faces and an understanding that the district is in a partnership and fully embedded team with the county and Three Rivers. So things we're going to do a little bit today. We're going to talk about the definition of homelessness under federal law, under McKinney-Vento law. We're going to talk a little bit about the impacts of homelessness on a student's experience, what the school does, and knowing how to make a referral to our program. So I have a short, just 1 minute video for you that I honestly thought would mix it up for us all a little bit and just really runs down the basics of McKinney-Vento law and what is a student in transition.
Nicole, I think we're seeing it, but not hearing
it? Does anyone who's tech savvy have advice?
Well, I wonder if it were shared just as a tab, maybe that is how you shared it. Sometimes if we share it just as a tab.
Entire screen? Yeah, let me try that just briefly.
It might be that that could be an idea. Otherwise, there probably are some more tech savvy people out here who would have some ideas. But we could try that. While you're doing that, when I introduced Nicole as being the new coordinator in this role, Nicole is, of course, has long experience in the school district, and some of you know her from her previous work throughout the district at ALC and at Hawthorne in different roles as well.
Well, I'm trying a single tab. Let's try this, Jennifer.
Let's see.
The McKinney-Vento Act is a federal law that protects students experiencing homelessness and their families. The relationship between school and
it's good, but it's buffering a little bit.
is integral to student success. If the student loses their home or lives in a place that is dangerous to the people living there, they may qualify for protection under the McKinney-Vento Act. This may look like a student staying in a shelter, hotel, motel, or sharing the housing of others, or even living in their own home that lacks utilities or is infested with vermin. The McKinney-Vento Act ensures that students receive support in obtaining anything needed for their education, including hygiene items, clothing, and educational and medical resources. In addition to support, students have certain rights pertaining to enrollment, attendance, and transportation. Students that qualify for McKinney-Vento are permitted to stay at their home school if it's in their best interest, even if they move to another district during the school year. If this happens, schools are required to provide transportation. If students do have to enroll elsewhere, they are allowed to start the enrollment process even if they don't immediately have the necessary documents, and schools can help them obtain those documents after enrollment. With this support, students can continue to grow and thrive at school, even if housing is a struggle. If you think you or someone you know could qualify for protection under the McKinney-Vento Act, reach out to your local homeless education liaison for assistance. For local and state contact information and to learn much more about McKinney-Vento, visit schoolhouseconnection.org/McKinney-Vento-Act today.
So hopefully that gave you just a little tiny 1-minute overview, and I believe Jennifer will share out the slides to this as well if there was something in particular in there that you wanted to go back and relook at. But in general, families and students have protection under this federal law that allows them to have the stability of having their students stay in the same school. So even if they are homeless and maybe going from hotel to hotel, or doubled up on a couch going from place to place, we're keeping things stable at school by the services provided under McKinney-Vento so that they can stay in that same school of origin. And that's one of the major protections under McKinney-Vento law. Okay. So, two laws that govern the work that in particular I'm tasked with are McKinney-Vento, which we just watched the 1-minute video regarding. It defines homelessness according to educational terms. It's a little different if you're familiar with HUD, the HUD definition of homelessness, which is the Housing and Urban Development definition, and the McKinney-Vento definitions are slightly different, which sometimes can be confusing. About 5% of my job is under the Fostering Connections Law. So I'm also the foster care point of contact for Rochester Public Schools, and in working with county social workers, again, in maintaining school stability, keeping transportation to that school of origin so that even if a student is moving into a placement, their school day is still that same familiar source of stability that they had been experiencing. I realize this is a little bit of a text-heavy slide, but I really did want you to see What we're really looking at is students that lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. And so the law defines that. You can see in there folks that are living in motels, hotels. Trailer parks, that one is confusing. It doesn't mean just that you're living in a trailer at Oak Terrace or something. It would be more like a campground is what they're referring to. Emergency shelter, transitional housing, folks that are sleeping outside parks, those kind of situations. So commonly, roughly 80% of students that are coded or listed as students that are in transition with Rochester Public Schools, about 80% of them fall under the doubled up. And then the remaining 20% are in shelters, hotels, motels, with the smallest number being unsheltered, living in a vehicle or potentially living outside. And so I just want to go back and point out, it's incredibly sad, right? And so the work that we're looking at is how, as a school system, can we stretch the limits of whatever we can provide in terms of resource connection or supports for students, because we know when they're experiencing these kind of situations, their academic life at school is completely separate and it's impacted by everything they have going on in their daily life. So we do have a little cheat sheet that the National Center for Homeless Youth provides to us, and if any of you would want one of these, I know many of you in this space already have them, but we have laminated copies of this same cheat sheet, and again, I know that this is not large size font on your screen right now, but it gives you an idea of what does it mean to be doubled up. Is, you know, for example, if I look on here and look on the one that's in blue, doubled up, is someone doubled up due to economic hardship or a similar reason? Or are they doubled up because it's a mutual decision and everyone's on the lease and it's stable for them? Because sometimes it can be kind of tricky, right? Like whether someone meets the definition or not. We want to try to help everyone meet it that we can, but we also have to follow the federal guidance in terms of program eligibility. So if you want one of those and you don't have one, either let Jennifer know or put your name in the chat and we'll make sure that we get you one of the laminated guides as well. We can send that to you. So looking at what are the effects that we know, just if you do a quick Google search, right? Like, how does homelessness affect a student's education? Students that are experiencing homelessness are absent more often, have more school instability, feelings of shame or stigma about their situation, which is why McKinney-Vento federal law exists, is to try to mitigate some of these concerns. So if you're coming in from the school system, or even if you're a community member, we just wanted to share with you that there's a rhyme and a reason as to whether a student might work with me as kind of just a basic level support if they're experiencing homelessness, or maybe how do they receive the intensive case management that would be provided through the Hope Navigators like Emily or Nicolette. So our team meets every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Everyone whose photos I shared with you at the beginning of this presentation. And every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we talk about families that have been referred to be screened, to see whether or not they're eligible under federal law. And we also talk about families that are already coded and to determine what kind of services can we provide and just answer questions and brainstorm with one another. Lots of times folks have questions about data privacy under that. We have the appropriate data privacy and confidentiality agreements in place. And in fact, Nicolette and Emily in particular are they have school district addresses as well, or they have special permissions and are embedded within our data sharing agreements. Is this large enough for you to see?
I think it's pretty good, and people can
Okay.
enlarge their screens, and as you
Okay.
said, we'll send out that slide deck at the end
Okay.
too. Or I could do it even earlier if that's helpful.
Thanks also Angie for putting that in the chat. So this is really a pyramid or a multi-tiered system, services of support triangle is what we call it within schools. But basically the bottom level of the triangle is this level of support that everyone is eligible to if they qualify under McKinney-Vento, and then less families and students become eligible for those upper tiers of services depending on their level of need. I just wanted to point out at the bottom level, any family that's referred, I speak with them to understand their situation a little bit more deeply, to see if they qualify. We always are, for students that qualify, we're providing transportation, working with the transportation department. A lot of kids on the Go vans get set up that way. Sometimes families will select bus passes or gas cards if that works better for them than having a van if they've moved across school boundaries. While we know that there's free breakfast and lunch across the state right now, students are automatically coded though under free and reduced, because those of you within the school side of things know that that helps with additional funding sources. And it just provides eligibility for fee waivers and different activities. We connect families to different resources. School social workers are made aware of which families and students are in transition so that they can reach out and provide some additional supports at the building. And so basically at that bottom level of the triangle, that's what anyone who's identified that kind of community connection, transportation, and enrollment support they would receive from our team. Then at that middle level and the upper level is where, to be honest with you, a lot of our families that are experiencing homelessness, most people would want to qualify for that, but there's limits to funding and limits to what's available. Connie provides some service at that second level and providing a little bit of case management with families. She does things like helps people fill out apartment applications, helps people write appeals to an apartment that they were denied to. She might help a student figure out how to get their state ID, helping someone figure out how to get a pair of glasses if their public health nurse is out of those vouchers. She's providing some targeted supports. We also work with Goodwill Easter Seals and families and students ages 16 and up that don't have a different employment counselor in the community and would like some intensive employment case management so that they're also looking at increasing their income. We can refer students and families to that service. And then at that third tier, that would be where the homework starts with home navigator, and the two Hope navigators are offering their service, which is intensive case management. And so they're providing more home visits, going to see people, families that are living in a hotel, helping them more deeply if families might have several evictions on their record that are preventing them from finding a new place that will accept them. They're providing more targeted support and just a higher level of service. I did miss putting on here, because Shay is a new hire of the eviction prevention work. She would really be at kind of that second level in terms of not everyone is working with her, but families that have received an eviction notice. She would be working with them to try to help them prevent that eviction. Speaking of that, I did put in a little extra slide about her because that is a new position within the district. We do receive federal funds, and she's paid through the Title I homeless set-aside dollars for this. So if people are asking, was it part of the referendum or not? No, it wasn't, but it's through federal dollars that our team is paid. And the reason why her position was hired is because we realize that a lot of the work that we're doing is pretty reactive. Families are already living in a hotel. They're already doubled up. They're already in a really difficult circumstance. And Lita and folks at the county, we're taking a hard look at what could we do that's just a little bit more preventive, a little more upstream work than waiting for something that's a very challenging circumstance to happen? Because we know once families have an eviction on their record, it's another barrier yet to being able to actually find someplace that will rent to them once they have that eviction. And so this team started tracking how many students were facing eviction. And from December 22 to December 23, 452 Rochester Public Schools students were facing an eviction and their families were reporting to eviction court. Most of those families and students were not already coded as IT. So it was something that was happening in the community separate from the ways we're identifying students and families. And so to try to get a more preventative nature, that position was hired, and she receives weekly public eviction data. That's public knowledge. Any one of us could look it up. On Mondays, she attends virtual court hearings, and she advocates for families to not receive evictions on their records. That's her position, and she's been in the job about 5 weeks.
Nicole, that's amazing. I'm sorry to interrupt your presentation,
Yeah.
but I just think that this component of the work that you're doing is really, just really interesting. And as you said, like trying to not be reactive, but that really effective approach, and just newly into it, but with that data that you were working with, that could be really impactful.
And I think something to note is that 2 years ago, those Hope Navigators were not in existence in this collaborative. So, I mean, there's been a lot of work that's done prior to me starting in this position August 1st that other team members have done to expand the team. I will say, like most of us, we're still very short-staffed. There's more work than what we can do. The county is currently going through a proposal right now to request a third Hope Navigator, and we've been collecting and sharing data with the county with the hopes that they can fund a third position, because we certainly have enough work for a third position to do. Probably 4 and 5 positions, but we'll start with third, and we're hoping we're hopeful that position will go through. So what do you do if you think that a student is in transition? Anyone can fill out a referral form to our team. The QR code is here, the link is here. I think we've done a pretty good job of advertising this link. It's not just Rochester Public Schools social workers that are filling this out. Salvation Army makes referrals, Olmsted County makes referrals, the Women's Shelter makes referrals. In other words, our community partners definitely are making referrals, and actually families have started self-referring at times as well. The only other way that our team receives referrals outside of this QR code is Records and Registration does have their own special process. When families are filling out a new enrollment to the district, there's some questions regarding their living situation on there that send an alert to the registration team, and they contact us directly. But otherwise, if you are thinking, hey, I know a student or family that really could use some service, this would be the link to fill out. Maybe I should just open this as well so that you can see it's about 5 questions. It gives you a reminder again at the top. I'm going to stop and reshare so I can get this tab. It gives you this reminder at the top of what does it mean. It reminds you so you don't have to remember what is it that would make someone eligible. And it has the little cheat sheet in there that I shared with you that if you want the laminated copy, we'll get you one, but otherwise it's also located at the top of this form. And then it just asks you a few questions about, what's the student's name. If you're connected to Skyward, there's a spot for their Skyward ID just to help us to make sure that we're really looking at the right student and family. If you don't know, you can put in the 9s. And then just a way for us to contact, whether we need an interpreter, and basically some comments about what their living situation is. Once you fill this out, then Connie and I receive this, and we make a phone call to the family or to the student to get a little more information. We hope to not have someone have to tell their story and their situation over and over and over. Mostly what we're asking up front is for some contact information and a little bit of background so that when we call the family, we can say, hey, we're giving you a call. You know, I work with the district housing team. I got your name from this person. They were worried about you. Is this an okay time for me to visit with you? And what's going on with your housing situation? What do you feel comfortable sharing with us? And then we go from there. And our team asks more in-depth questions about evictions and prior homelessness, and if there's any sort of criminal history or what the barriers or concerns are, so that we can appropriately decide when we were looking at that triangle, what level of service someone would qualify for. So I'm going to share a little bit of data with you and ask you to take a look at the following data with some of these questions in mind. And I left these questions on the following, slides as well, but just kind of taking a look at data, what surprised you about it, what new information did you learn, what questions do you have as you look at this. So I'm not going to read this to you. I'm going to let you just take a look at it a little bit. And if you can put, any questions or comments that you have in the chat, and we'll take a little time to answer some questions or discuss as a group too. So I'll be quiet for a little bit and let you look at the data and share your thoughts.
Nicole, this is Karen Yell from Longfellow Elementary. I really appreciate your time today. I feel like some of these stats are really staggering. I just appreciate you bringing what you guys are doing to everyone. So just thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and for learning, about what's happening. I think a lot of it is hidden, especially when we think about the doubled up, that's a hidden population that we don't always know about. Something that always strikes me in particular is the 1% stat, and I think that's underreported here, right? But that's coming from statewide student survey data. The latest we had was from 2022. I believe they do that every 2 years, so we don't have the 2024 stats yet. I'm certain in reality that the number is higher than 1%, but just to see any numbers in there is sobering.
Hi, I'm Khadijah from Pomoja Women. A lot of the times, and we work with Lida, we kind of let her know what to do next, and she always steers us to the right places. Within the culture of the Somali community, a lot of the times they stay with family, even though they're considered homeless. And then the reporting part is very tricky because through our food pantry and our after school programs, we see a lot of the kids who utilize those programs, and they either the parents would tell the kids, oh, make sure when you're, leaving from after school that you bring some food home with you. And that's how we realized that. And we always bring some food from the pantry to the after school to just kind of pack their backpacks up if the community resource room is not open at the school that we're using. How can we, without getting in trouble, because a lot of the families are like, I'm not homeless, I'm just going through something right now, and I have a sister or an aunt or an uncle or a mom I'm staying with. What do we do in a situation like that? We've talked to Lita about it, and she kind of told us here and there, things to do. But the fact that I really like data too, I like reporting it, and I like reporting how many that we're not reaching to, the school district is not reaching to. Because that would change a couple of things if you guys knew. So how do we go about that? is like a question.
Well, those are really good questions, and I mean, I think a few different things. I appreciate you trying to look for what the gaps in service are, right? Because we always have to be able to identify the gaps first in order to then justify what additional resources we need, or staffing we need, or grants we need to write. Like, we need to find which populations are we not serving, or where is the need, and get some numbers around it. One of the things that just personally I find is that families are concerned that it's a child protection issue, and so there's a lot of anxiety and nerves, right? Like, I just spoke to a family that I just did a general check-in with, just to say, hey, I haven't talked to you in a while, are you still doubled up with your friend? How are things going? Are there things you need? Nicole, I was really scared to tell you this, but my church encouraged me, it was okay for me to tell you that we're actually, all 5 of us were sleeping in our vehicle right now. But I was concerned to tell you because I thought it would be a child protection report. And so I think just collectively, this group understanding and knowing and spreading the word that homelessness in and of itself, or having a low income or living within poverty in and of itself, is not a child protection concern.
Mhm.
If someone were to call and to report that, and it would be like, okay, good to know, does the family want us to call to talk about resources, but that would be the end of it. I think there's just a lot of education to do around that.
Yeah.
Culturally, certainly there's different cultural values and systems around who lives with who. Some of the guidance that we receive, I just was in a statewide call. We get together once a month across the state as coordinators to understand best practice and kind of, what's happening in Minneapolis, what's happening in Owatonna, what are people doing, how can we be innovative. We were just talking about doubled up versus not doubled up. And I could pull this or share this with you at a later time. I don't have it right at my fingertips, but some of the questions were regarding, are folks doubled up because it's working out for everybody? Are people on the lease together? Is this a long-term plan? Or are people doubled up because of a financial hardship, and if they could figure out any other way, they would have their own place? Are they over the number for bedrooms, which is typically 2 people per bedroom, generally speaking? Those are some of the kinds of things to look at, because some families might say, we're over the amount, but we've been living like this for 2 years. We like to live together, or culturally this is what we're going to do long term, and we're not looking for something different. That's a very different response, and we respect their personal decisions, versus doubled up because there's no other option.
And then I had another question, sorry. When you guys place people into either hotels or like if they're in transition, usually what we get is when people come to the pantry, they ask like, I'm taking for another family too, and that family's address is currently at a hotel or a motel. Do you like, and we can talk this off, do you want us to report as a pantry? Because our data, when we have to put it in for the food bank, is we say that it's anonymous because there's no name, there's no address, so we have to put that there. So just the number of people that they took to the food. But they say that no, the county is helping this family. They just don't want to share their name, but they live in a hotel for right now. So it's like for with the partnership wise, like with you guys and us, is like, should that be like something that we need to report to you guys also?
Well, let me do some thinking about that. I feel like that's probably a question for Alita, a little above me, as I'm gonna just put her up there as the coordinator of community partnerships. But in general, we also could get you some of these wrap cards that have the program information and have the QR code on it as well, so that families can feel free. Like, even if that's then a friend who's like, well, I'm not gonna give you my friend's information, they're not even here, I don't feel comfortable with that. You could at least send this along where if they wanna give their own information, they're leaving with it. Okay, I'm looking in the chat a little bit. From Emily, prior to COVID, there was state consideration of children ages birth to pre-kindergarten who met McKinney-Vento to automatically qualify for early childhood education, early intervention. Then COVID hit. Okay, so there are 10 different like mandates that someone who is the McKinney-Vento liaison, and that is my role, is required to do, or like information to spread or connections to make. And one of those is to early childhood screening and early Head Start. I'm 10 weeks into this job or something like that right now, so bear with me as I'm relatively new. But I did just meet with Head Start a couple of weeks ago. Something to know regarding Head Start is that it's an auto qualifier. Head Start is similar to coordinated entry, where it's not just like, if you're number one on the list, you're number one to receive a Head Start spot. If that makes sense, it has to do with your circumstance. So for Head Start, if they know and we're helping someone that's McKinney-Vento eligible, they are an auto qualifier. So if there's any opening, that family is at the highest priority. I also just met recently with Erica Schumacher within the district, and Jenna Skrukrud regarding qualifying for, or just making sure we're making connections between our, families and early childhood screening. And so we are in connections about that to automatically qualify for early childhood special education. I guess I don't know about that in particular, that they automatically qualify for special education, but just that we're mandated to make that connection between families receiving service under McKinney-Vento and early childhood. Yes, Emily is amazing. School social workers, and I would echo what Leah is saying as well. School social workers are identified school contacts at the base of the triangle. We're in it together, like we work together. There's no way any of us could do all the work on our own. The link available outside of RPS. Can you tell me a little more? Are you looking for the referral link, Brian? If you're still here?
Yeah, pretty much. So the link, I mean, I wasn't aware of it at all. So again, I'm just wondering where it is and how people find it, for want of a better phrase.
So,
And then the follow-on would be, is it available in other languages? Going back to what Lisa was saying.
Those are really good questions. So it would be available to anyone. It's in this presentation, so you're welcome to have it and spread the word, and we're trying to spread the word. And it is available outside RPS, like our partnering organizations have it, or like today, right? We're trying to get the word out. If you want any of the RAC cards, anybody who wants those as well, could let Jennifer, I know, and we can get you physical copies. Being available in other languages, that's a great point, Brian. I don't know that it is. That would be something for us to work on, and I will make note of that.
Again, just thinking if people are self-referring, what we were saying earlier, then that might be a barrier to them.
You're right.
Actually doing that, or if, again, if they are working through a church or other organization, it might be them that fills the form in, but for those self-referral folk, yeah.
You're right, Brian. That's something for us to take a look at. Thank you for bringing that up.
Sure.
I didn't even read this, Lisa, but yes, CPS and yes, also parent situation, maybe a substance use issue. I mean, that's one of the things we're tasked with, is making connections for mental health supports and substance use supports, both for students and for parents or guardians, making them comfortable enough to reach out for help. I think that's always just a trusting relationship built over time. And I mean, I guess I should share that my background is as a social worker with 25 years experience in Rochester, and just from that lens, I would say folks seeing you as reliable and trustworthy and knowing that you'll follow through, and directly sharing, when you're in some of the roles that we're in as a service provider, what are child protection reports? What things would be reported, what things would not.
Thank you.
Yeah. Were there any other questions or thoughts or something that folks didn't necessarily want to share in the chat, but just a hand raise of a question or a thought or a reflection on the data? Yeah,
I'm
thank
gonna
you.
call Brian here again, sorry, just
Yeah.
to chime in and just see, what space, yes, that's the right word, or what collaborations we could do in that after-school space, to help provide some, I'm not going to say safety net, but a safe space for, some of those kids to have experiences that may be better than what they're, what they're used to. So again, making sure, for example, from 21st century grant perspective lens, that we're not missing those kids in terms of giving them those enrichments and particularly to probably academic supports. So if they are struggling, as we know they are with their academics and making sure they're getting their academic supports through homework help or whatever. But again, at the same time, how do we identify them without kind of showing them up, if you know what I mean? We want them and we want them there for sure. So how do we kind of facilitate some of that? Maybe it's just collaborating with you guys in that after school space and promoting that to those kids. And again, the transportation element would be something we'd obviously need to consider if they are, getting those transportations immediately after the end of school rather than later on in the, when after school programs end. So, but again, thinking you don't want these kids missing out.
You raised some good points, Brian, and we know that this is true for all students, whether they're housing status or not, that students that are engaged and involved in extracurricular activities, we know that they do better in school and they have more positive feelings about school and they're just tied in. We want that for everyone. And so things to know about after school activities and families that qualify as in transition. Fees can be waived or covered for many after school activities, sports, music, chess, and if you know of a situation like that for a family in transition, be sure to let me know and we can talk logistics. Brian also raises another good point regarding transportation. So that can be tricky, but McKinney-Vento law actually does provide a provision for transportation as well. This is what we have right now to offer for that. And so there could be room to grow, but this is what we have. For students that are participating in after-school things, we can provide city bus passes, we can provide gas cards to families, we can work with our internal transportation department for activities that end up to 5 p.m. The tough thing is that the activity ends after 5 p.m. In talking to transportation, we don't have the van contracts or, evening service. So when you think about if it's something like varsity volleyball, right, like it's probably looking at city bus passes or gas cards. That's what we have currently. But I don't think we have good word out on that currently. I'm working on a little cheat sheet of services for school social workers. So if you're a school social worker in this space, stay tuned. But I think just in general for folks to know that there's some transportation supports available and certainly fee and activity waivers or supports available. And yeah, Brian, we probably should get together outside of here sometime.
Yeah, we definitely should. So again, let me just for the room more generally, so 21st century, and I don't want to take up time if you've got something else coming up, Jennifer, so just wave at me to be quiet if I'm taking someone's time here. So 21st Century Grant provides after school enrichment and academic supports. And again, we're trying to get into that out of school time thinking, so it's before the bell as well as after the bell and on non-school days, providing academic supports and a variety of enrichments and activities We are currently in, with the 2 grant cohorts we're in all of our middle schools and we're in all of our high schools, including the ALC. So Nicole, you know that of old as well. We've been there for a while. And we have community partners like Khadija with Promote Women, Boys and Girls Club, Rochester International Youth Organization, SASA. We did have FSR, but they've pulled out for various reasons. So we're in the community, we're in a range of schools. We're not at the elementary level, unfortunately. So, and again, we can provide all 21st century activities are free at the point of delivery. But again, we know that youth enrichment do often charge fees, and we waive those for folk on free and reduced lunches, generally speaking. And again, I know then that you have that additional funding to take care of that, Nicole, should that arise. So we, again, in community ed, we do a lot to make sure we have equitable access to our after schools. We provide transportation through the district. We also have staff who are van trained who can take kids home in an emergency. So there's lots of stuff that's happening in that after school space that, again, we want to make sure we're serving the right kids and making sure they get those opportunities.
That's great, Brian. Nicole, go ahead. It sounds like there could be some future collaboration there.
For sure. Thank you for that, Brian. A couple more questions from the chat. Deb asked, are these supports available to undocumented families? Yes, McKinney-Vento law does not discriminate whether someone is regarding their legal status. However, some programs in the community, right, through county or other organizations, may have different requirements attached to their programs, whether someone is eligible for Section 8 voucher, housing choice vouchers or not. And that is one of the things that, now that I'm about 10 weeks in, it's interesting you ask that. That is a question that I am currently asking, and I'm trying to develop or see what might already exist in terms of resource guides for families that have an undocumented status. So that's work for me to do, but in terms of eligibility under McKinney-Vento, those families are eligible. Yes, Darcy, I see your note. I didn't realize you didn't have anyone at Pinewood right now. Yeah, let's stay in touch. And I know we're down to our last just few minutes. Were there any closing thoughts or questions for me?